Morning, it's Monty at Sportive Cyclist. In this video I'm going to compare the difference between road bikes and hybrid bikes, because this is a very important question. Before all that though, if you are a mammal and you enjoy road cycling and you enjoy enthusiastic, slightly amateurish content from an enthusiastic and slightly amateurish road cyclist, then you should definitely hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon to be informed when I release a new video. So why are they called hybrid bikes? Well, it's time for a short and pretty inaccurate history lesson. If you know any of these facts to be wrong, well, please don't comment below. As we know, in this day and age, facts don't really matter anymore. Back in the day, the 19th century, bikes were just called bicycles and they were used for transporting people around. Turn of the 20th century, I guess, they turned into racing bikes as people started to race them together, and we had the invention of the Tour de France. Now we've got horses coming along, so I'm going to pick up this story somewhere else. The bikes were just bikes. You had your bikes for transporting yourself around and you had your bikes for racing. Then in, I think, the 1970s in California, probably Marin County, people started riding them down hills, started knackering them because they were giving them so much abuse, and as a result started building tougher bikes, and that started the whole mountain biking thing. At some point in the 1980s, 1990s, people realized that you had your racing road bikes, you had your mountain bikes, and you had no term to describe the thing in the middle, and so someone coined the term hybrid bike. And with that rather garbled history lesson from someone who does admittedly hold a history degree, we should probably look at the features that mark out a hybrid bike from a road bike. Go! Features that mark out a road bike: we have our drop handlebars here, we have quite narrow frame here. The handlebars in this case are below the saddle that promote a, more of a racing, riding position. Who knows? We've got narrow tyres here. In this case, I think these are 23s, which by modern standards is actually quite narrow. It's got a road bike chain set on it. This is one made by Campagnola. It's right at the bottom end of their range. That one says Mirage there, but I'm pretty sure the other bits relate to something else. And we've got caliper brakes. We've got, actually, in the grand scheme of things, for a road bike, not the narrowest of saddles. This is quite comfortable. And we've got a few accoutrements that you might expect on a road bike, like saddlebag, bottle holder, some mounts for bike computers. Who needs two mounts? And we've got lights here. All else being equal, the road bike will have a firmer ride than that on a hybrid, and that's down to the narrower tyres, the lack of suspension, slightly harder saddle, probably slightly firmer geometry. But when we start going into the geometry stakes, getting rather out of my depth. Should we go and look at this hybrid bike then? Now, I actually own a hybrid bike by accident. Back in 2010, I actually went to my local bike shop with the intention of buying a bike seat rather than a bike. At the time, I only had my trusty doors, which is still serving me well, and I was of the opinion that the doors wouldn't really support one of those cantilevered bike seats. So without giving much greater thought than asking the guy at the bike shop what bike I should buy, I ended up buying my Scott hybrid. To be fair, it's done the job. It absolutely has managed to carry that bike seat around. Perhaps with hindsight, I should either have saved the money, attached it to this bike. I've had a hybrid bike now for about a decade and I've got a lot of use out of it, so there's definitely a case to be made for owning a hybrid in addition to a number of road bikes. Now, you might be admiring my rather fine cycling jersey. This is the Alpine jersey by cycling clothing manufacturers Vulpine, and they very kindly sent me a couple of jerseys and in fact 3 pairs of socks to test. There'll be a review coming later on this channel, but in the meantime it's actually rather nice. And if you like the look of it and you want to check them out, please do click the link in the description below this post. This video isn't sponsored by Vulpine, but people are going to send me nice clothes to test. Well, may as well give them a shout out. And here we have my hybrid, and the first thing that's immediately obvious is the frame itself is somewhat different. The tubes, whilst alloy like the doors, are significantly chunkier than those on the road bike. It's got a suspension fork at the front and the angle on the top tube is much steeper, whereas it was horizontal on the road bike. And I'm certainly not the expert when it comes to bike frames, but certainly that would allow us to lower the seat quite a lot in order to make for a much more relaxed riding position. Look at these tubes, nice and chunky, with pretty industrial welding going on here. To be clear, on this bike nothing is particularly high spec. I think from memory it probably cost in the order of about 500 quid, and so the componentry befits that. Now, we mentioned the suspension forks already. It's a pretty common feature on a hybrid bike. These are not high performance ones like you might see on a mountain bike. Very much about giving a bit of comfort when you're riding on the road. They're not really intended for anything more than light, gravelly path type riding. For most hybrids, these suspension forks are going to add a significant amount of weight. Light as a feather. All else being equal, a road bike will tend to weigh less than a hybrid. That's somewhat a factor of it having fewer components, tending to have less in the way of suspension forks and whatnot, but also because the frame itself will tend to be slightly less chunky and sturdy, even if it's using the same material. Your average road bike rider, owner, will likely have spent more money on his road bike, and so as a result you tend to find they use more expensive, lighter materials like carbon fibre. Your hybrid rider is probably more focused on things like commuting and flatter journeys, where weight is less a concern. Whilst you absolutely can get carbon framed hybrid bikes, you do tend to find that a large proportion of them are made of aluminium, and manufacturers, in order to keep the price as low as possible, will tend to use thicker, heavier tubes to maintain the strength of the frame at the expense of weight, I guess. So let's answer this question quickly. Can I use my hybrid to do a sportive? Absolutely, the answer is yes. I've done numerous sportives where I've seen people riding and enjoying their sportives whilst riding on a hybrid. My first Ride London event back in 2013, it was notably completed by a certain Boris Johnson. Then he was Mayor of London and he did it on a hybrid. The challenge, if you're going to be doing a longer sportive, is that the distance that you need to cover, the speed at which you need to go, is a lot more challenging on a heavier hybrid bike where you're not in quite as aerodynamic position. I've certainly seen very experienced, very rapid cyclists completing extremely long distances on hybrids, so it absolutely doesn't discount you from doing sportive on a hybrid. Gearing wise, this is a Shimano chain set. I think it's, well, it says here Shimano Acera and this says Shimano Tawny. It's certainly not a road chain set. Don't think it's a mountain biking one either. In terms of gearing, you tend to find that hybrids are more likely to have, in this case it's got a triple. It's got 3 chain rings at the front and has an extremely wide range of gears available. There's some pretty easy gears on this bike, which is not really intended for super steep climbing in the Alps or the Pyrenees, but more for people that want to cruise along very easily on their commute or on their ride into town without getting a sweat on. Now clearly, like most bikes, you can choose whichever pedals you want to have. In my case, I elected for some rusty ones. So in my case, I elected to put on some Shimano SPDs. These are the double-sided mountain biking pedals. As I mentioned earlier about having bought the bike mainly in order to take the bike seat, and this is the fitting here that it cantilevers off. Actually, why don't I show you that? Ta-da! There you can see that it cantilevers off this bracket here and is held sort of levitated above this rear wheel. Actually, I could probably have managed to, maybe not, maybe it wouldn't have fitted there, but either way, ended up with a new bike. The attraction of drop handlebars on road bikes, of course, is that you can put your hands in a number of positions. On top, on the hoods, and you've got in the drops when you want to lower your body position. Age 40, Montgomery finally learned how to ride without his hands on the handlebars. Next stop, bunny hops. We talked about the drop handlebars on the road bike. Here you can see that they're flat handlebars got our gears, our brakes, everything on top. There's only really one position for your hands. The shifters are very much more like mountain bike shifters rather than the road bike ones. Here you can see that the brakes and the shifters are somewhat integrated. There's some indicator on the top that tells you what number you're in. You can obviously fit computer mounts here, lights, everything you need to. All hybrids come with a bell, which is important to retain on there for maximum street cred. I should probably mention brakes. It does feel as if the hybrid biking community were quicker to pick up on the value of disc brakes over road cyclists in general. Whilst this doesn't have disc brakes, you know, it has the brackets to accommodate them. And this was a 10-year-old bike. Probably will tend to find that a lot of hybrids these days over a certain price point will tend to have disc brakes. Certainly a few years ago it was far less common to see them on road bikes, but you'd see them on hybrids all the time. In my case, I've got some pretty ropey rim brakes here, but I suppose they do the job. Whilst we're here at the fork end of the bike, it's worth pointing out the huge amount of tyre clearance that we've got in this fork here. Similarly at the back, this could accommodate a much wider tyre, whereas if we scoot over to my road bike, we can see here these are 23s and there is not much clearance for anything a great deal wider. And whilst more and more road bike frames and forks these days do accommodate wider tyres, generally speaking you'll find that hybrids will take a wider tyre whilst road bikes tend to be somewhat narrower.
So I should perhaps have put this as a little disclaimer at the beginning of this video, but my comparison of road bikes and hybrid bikes is admittedly very much from the perspective of a road cyclist. You can absolutely use a hybrid bike, or indeed any other sort of bike, mountain bike, e-bike, in order to cycle for fun, for enjoyment, for fitness. And no more obvious is that than right now we're seeing an explosion in people using what bikes they have in order to maintain their health and to get out of the house. Some of these guys and girls are going at a fair old clip. Absolutely, hybrids can be used for 100% of the benefit that you are going to get from owning and riding a road bike. You can go faster on a road bike and they look better though.
One factor about hybrids that is pretty common is people are probably less precious about how they look, giving off the right impression. There is a term for this plasticky thing here, which I think comes on a lot of mountain bikes, that is immediately removed by people that want to look a bit pro. Needless to say, I haven't removed it. Another similarity in my case between my hybrid and this particular road bike is the general need for a bit of maintenance, TLC and cleaning. That's not something that applies across the board. So to conclude, we've gone through the similarities and differences between road bikes and hybrid bikes. If there's something that I've missed, please do let me know in the comments below. I guess one of the questions would be, would I buy a hybrid bike now? In all honesty, I probably wouldn't, but that's more because in the last few years I've committed more and more to road cycling, and to the extent that I want to broaden what a road bike can do, I would probably look towards a gravel or adventure bike as my next purchase. But if a hybrid bike is all you have access to and you'd like to get fitter, have fun on a bike, perhaps use it for a Sportive or two, then you absolutely can do, and you absolutely should really. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more. I've been Monty, this is Sportive Cyclist, the mammal channel, and I'll see you in the next video.